Good day, ladies and gentlemen. We will start the LPD here in the next 2 minutes. Colonel Nally, this is Chief Joyce. Just really quick for you, ma'am. I'm going to start off with a quick 2 to 3 minute introduction, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Hey, Fred, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can. I can hear you.
Great.
Not too sure who that was, but thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Bob Harding. It's General Harding.
Oh, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine, Fred. Thanks for arranging this.
No problem, sir. And it wasn't me. It was all Secretary News.
Is he on? Is Chief Newsom on?
Chief Newsom is on.
Yes, sir. I'm on the line.
Hey, Chief, how are you?
I'm doing great, sir. Living life. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. I can see you have about 42 participants already. I really appreciate you guys doing this. And I think Colonel Nally just signed on.
Yes, sir. And I'm appreciative that she was able to do this for us because I think it's very important to like have some of them conversations with like cyber officers and intelligence officers to try to like close the gap on some of the concepts that we're working. So I'm extremely appreciative of her effort in this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Colonel Nally, can you hear us?
Good afternoon, sir. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay,
I'm
guys.
standing by.
I'll turn it over to the experts then, and I'll stand by. Looking forward to this, Nadine. As I said last night, you're just a superstar, and to be able to get your expertise in a timely, relevant manner like this is appreciated by all of us, your fellow officers. You've been at all levels, from the National Army and international, as a matter of fact, and this is a special event for us. So. With that, Jeff and Fred, over to you guys.
That's where
Sounds good, sir. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it, sir. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On the behalf of the senior Huachuca Rocks mentors, Major General Promotable Anthony Hale and Major General retired Robert Harding, I would like to welcome everyone to today's Leaders Professional Development session titled Bridging the Gap Between Cyber and Intelligence. I am CW3 Frederick T. Joyce, president of Huachuca Rocks, and I am joined today by my co-host, CW2 Jeff B. Newsom, the secretary of Huachuca Rocks. And on the behalf of our chapter, I would like to welcome everyone here at the edge of the frontier and dispersed throughout the Army virtually at this meeting. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. The Huachuca Rocks Incorporated chapter is based at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. We were established as an interest group in mid-2021 and chartered as an official chapter of the Rocks Incorporated on 30 January 2023. Our goal is to provide mentorship, professional development, and professional networking opportunities for Army officers, warrant officers, civilians, and cadets with a particular focus on a variety of topics that includes MI, cyber, the Army of 2030, multi-domain operations, and other interest areas based on our members' inputs at the home of MI. Although this is the home of intelligence, we, Team Huachuca, make a specific point to ensure eligible and interested personnel, regardless of branch, understand that they are welcome to become members of Huachuca Rocks. We emphasize inclusion and we work hard to incorporate fellow officers and warrant officers, civilians, and cadets who are collectively focused on a challenging but rewarding work and task of investing in people. Before starting this discussion, I'd like to set a few guidelines for today's LPD. First, if you have a question for our guests, we will set aside time after her comments to pose your questions. So please enter them into the chat and include your rank and name if you are military. We will do our very best to answer as many questions as possible within the allotted time. Second, please ensure that you are muted during our session. For today's guest, I would like to introduce Colonel Nally, who assumed the responsibilities of the Army Capability Manager Cyber Director in June of 2023. She was she was commissioned as a cyber officer in 2000 from Morgan State University. She has an extensive background in cyber policy and military intelligence. She brings a wealth of expertise to her current role, with experience ranging from serving as the Director for Defense Innovation and Cyber Policy on the National Security Council to commanding special mission units in Iraq and Afghanistan. Colonel Nally, thank you so much for joining us today. I will turn it over to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me? Can I just get a Lima Charlie if you can hear me? Because
I can hear you, Lima Charlie, and then for everybody else in the session, if you can please mute your mics, it'll be much appreciated.
And I can hear you loud and clear, ma'am.
We can hear you.
okay,
Colonel Nally.
awesome. I'm set up in the ad hoc space to do this. So I have my phone hooked to like literally sitting on top of a router because there is no VTC connectivity nearby. But I just want to thank you guys first for inviting me or having me come to speak to the team today, especially knowing that this is a very new chapter that you guys have stood out at Fort Huachuca. General Harden, thanks for calling last night to see if there was any assistance that I needed. I just really enjoy these types of opportunities. One, because it gives me an opportunity. I always tell my team, you know, I'm the biggest storyteller for wherever I go. I'm going to be the biggest evangelist, the biggest storyteller for that organization. But counter to that, I also think that it's important for us to collaborate with different communities of interest to understand, one, what questions are out there, better educate folks on the role of cyber and the future of cyber. One correction to Chief Newsom, thank you for reaching out to me last summer to invite me to speak here today. The only correction is I actually commissioned from Morgan State as a military intelligence officer, vice cyber officer. Cyber did not become an opportunity for the Army for officers until 2014. So my first 14 years, I commissioned back in 2000. I worked Intel. I have, you know, if you saw my bio, I've done things from the range of bringing national level capabilities down to the tactical force, to taking teams out, special mission teams out with SIGINT terminal guidance. SIGINT was my discipline, to the things that I've done now with cyber, working through the real-time regional gateway and leading a task force up at the Cyber Mission Force and working policy at the White House. So I look forward to the discussion today. I think it'll be useful. I always say, you know, Mao's theory, where you stand in certain positions is where you're currently sitting. And as he mentioned, I'm the ACM Cyber down at Fort Eisenhower. So we're going to start with the slide. It's a placemat that I use when we go out and we'll do the road show. And I know a lot of the questions came from when I spoke down at TechNet back in August. So hopefully this will illuminate some of those ideas and thoughts that you guys had when you sent some of the questions in. So we'll start with this slide. Back in 2022, when I first learned that I was coming to Acom Cyber, I actually, when the list came out, I had to do a quick Google search. What is an Acom? What is an Army Capabilities Manager for Cyber? Where is this organization located? And true story, but for Acom for Cyberspace Operations, just to kind of lay the framework, you know, we do capability development activities across the Army modernization enterprise. And that's done to ensure holistic, standardized, and integrated capabilities, looking from basically soup to nuts, making sure that it's filled into the Army and the Joint Force as appropriate. We coordinate to work on doctrine. So when you think about .mil-PF, doctrine, organization, training, material leadership, education, personnel and facilities, as well as policy, we work to make sure that whatever that capability that we're providing to the Joint Force is integrated in support of cyberspace operation capabilities to ensure that, you know, as we work to get some of the capabilities out to the battlefield, there's success and it's effective. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we do at an ACOM. We pull requirements from the user, the folks that's actually out in the field, and we work to get that integrated into the force. From an ACOM Cyber perspective, our strategy is nested. We fall under Army Futures Command, specifically FCC, and along with the big Army, we always look to make sure, because we're building towards the future, we're building a future to be fielded. We want to ensure that we're developing our right to the requirements provided by the warfighter on the battlefield. Someone says they're not getting audio. Can we do a quick audio check?
I can still hear you, ma'am.
And I also can still hear you, ma'am.
Okay, I just saw the chat come up on the screen. Okay, got it. Perhaps whoever can't hear, I did see that this is being recorded, so we can go ahead and have them run it back if there is no audio on their side. But good to hear that it's loud, Lima Charlie for everyone else. But as I was saying, our strategy, if you're looking at the slide, that's the top left-hand corner, making sure that those requirements and those capabilities really mirror up to what the warfighter on the battlefield has asked for in cyberspace. When we look at the ACOM Cyber's vision, in order to enable our vision, coming into the job back in June, sat down with my core team, which I have a piece of paper here today. If you have questions or if there's something I can't answer, I'll take your questions, get back to you. But I also have my hype squad, my deputy, my civilian deputy, my military deputy, Rebecca Williams, and Mr. Tim Johnson on the line to provide covering fires for me. But sat down with my core team, and we really looked at, you know, how do we shape our vision? Because our mission was rapidly evolving with the work that's being done at Big Army, the changes that's been done with the R-Struct, the stand-up of the MDEVs, the MDTFs, to make sure that we are building requirements that support the Army of 2030. So sitting down, you know, we looked, they sent me out on doing basically a round robin with all of our key stakeholders. And in one of those instances, Lieutenant General Potter, Army G2, she was at an Army Force Integration Requirements Board up at Aberdeen, and I had the opportunity to listen to her. And one of the notes that I took when she was speaking was, you know, the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army at the time had talked about these operational imperatives that were critical at each echelon to ensure success in warfighting. And it truly was looking at the lowest level, whether it's one of the 3 to 25 BCTs, one of the 6 divisions, the 4 corps, 5 MDTFs, to one of the 3 theaters. We're truly going to be doing multi-domain operations in the next fight. And so those imperatives that she kind of outlined, it was 6 imperatives, were sense farther, ability to cover forces, precise and long-range fires, protect forces, communicate and share data, and sustain the fight. And when you think about that, every aspect of that, something I've said previously is every aspect of this is going to involve an element of cyber, but it also will involve an element of intelligence. Every single aspect, every single one of those operational imperatives. So as you look at the current landscape, and as the landscape of warfighting changes, it's going to include threats, physical threats, human threats, that dynamic of cyber attacks. The Army has to prioritize developing cyber capabilities in a cohesive way to reduce costs, to reduce redundancy, while maintaining that operational advantage, whether it's in the space of data-driven technologies and or maximizing strategic partnerships and or minimizing stovepipe solutions. So as we move across the slide, talk a little bit about our cyberspace portfolio, because if you've ever been at Fort Meade, if you work with the 704th and or the 780th, this will be somewhat familiar to you. Some of the capabilities that we use, you maybe have seen them or touched them or felt them in some regard if you worked in US Cybercom. So our capabilities are mutually supporting, and it enables us to rapidly sense, understand, decide, and act in cyberspace. Currently, we have over 20 programs of record. And I'm going to start with that first line of effort, and that's our defensive cyber operations. And I'm not going to go through every capability, but I'll kind of go through so we can get to the meat of the conversation, which is how do we bridge the gap between intel and cyber. So when we talk DCO, these are our capabilities that's employed throughout friendly cyberspace, and it gives us the ability to protect data, protect networks, net-centric capabilities, and other designated systems during the full range of military operations. And this is essentially from an ACM cyber perspective, this is our most robust portfolio. And it gives us, an opportunity to allow for continuous testing and assessments of softwares that we're going to be using from a DCO tools perspective on the production network. Next, we'll talk through our maneuver capabilities. And this is an opportunity where we're able, and from an intelligence perspective, if you've worked Title 50 missions, this is the opportunity that we have. If you have operators, before cyber was a thing, this is where we actually provide remote access, reducing time for DCO forces to respond in threat activities. And then we'll talk a little bit in this arena from a DCO perspective with what is our cyber's #1 priority today, and that's cyber analytics. And this is the Army's big data platform, and it's known as Gabriel Nimbus. And it's vital to the cyber domain for its rapid ability to process terabytes of data, increasing the ability to detect the adversary in a contested threat environment. And then there's other opportunities where we can take this and we could push it from the enterprise, meaning back at your home station, down to the lowest echelon to reduce that bandwidth and give them the opportunity to operationalize some of these capabilities. Move it over to offensive cyber operations. Over the last 6 months or so, ACM Cyber's #1 priority was the support to the 120-day study, which this was precipitated by US Cybercom gaining enhanced budget control. Essentially, that's given them those SOCOM-like authorities where they can rapidly acquire new capabilities. And so with that, some of our portfolio obviously has gone from purple, or we've shifted that money over to Cybercom as of 1 October to looking at opportunities with the existing capabilities that we have, and how can we harvest those capabilities or use those capabilities and push them out to the operational and the tactical edge. So we've been heavily involved in that effort. And we understand in regards to the application, whether it's the National Defense Strategy memo or understanding what our current pace and challenge is, we understand that we have to take a look at our current programs of record and modernize those to support the future fight. Essentially, from an OCO perspective, what we do with our tools, we build them around counter adversary effects by focusing on whether it's the adversary C4I systems, their weapon systems, or their critical infrastructure. So essentially, we have the opportunity here to customize our tools remotely for the specific threat environment. And this leads into the tool development environment, which is dedicated to build and test tools against adversary systems. When we talk about the virtual environments, I'm going to speak of one because that's where I am right now. I'm down at in Orlando, Florida with PCTE. So our virtual environments are essentially opportunities where we have a common, we build these environments out to illuminate a common operating picture for cyber key terrain and other cyber training environments. And so for me down here this week, I have the opportunity, they're updating the system. They call it, a sprint where they're delivering new capabilities to the users. So for the persistent cyber training environment, this is an opportunity here, and you may have heard of it, PCTE, in your schoolhouses, and or if you work in the CMF, or at one of the NSA sites, but this is where we provide DoD operators, cyber operators, and we also have partner collaboration here with a distributed capability to train as they fight. And essentially General Nakasoni's imperative is, we're building out this capability to make sure it's relevant, it's configurable, and it's real time. And they're able to do it virtually. And so it's 2023. I was, prior to taking battalion command back in 2017, I was a national cyber protection team lead. And I was introduced to PCTE. And I will tell you, it was not realistic. It did not characterize a SCADA or ICS environment appropriately. When your exercise was done, they shut it off and they cleaned the systems, and then they would have to rebuild it. So where we are today is we have the opportunity to start from individual, collective, and MRX-like training. So it supports it through that entire training cycle. And truly, we have seen this pay big dividends with how we do work our way through mission rehearsals. And then the last piece I'll speak here before we break over to kind of the topic du jour is look down on the screen, the ACM Cyber's priorities and our initiatives. And something that is important to my team is to make sure that all the work that we do, we have constant communications with our key stakeholders. And all the work that we do is synchronized, whether it's with US Cybercom, Army Cyber, the MDTFs that we're working with and fielding capabilities to, all the way down to some of the MDEVs, as well as the centers of excellence. So we have good relationships with Mission Command Center of Excellence. We have good relationships with the Intelligence Center of Excellence, the ACMs out there. So these are the efforts that we do to make sure that, one, that we're the number one user representative, right? So from understanding, going out to the force and understanding what the user needs, what gap currently exists, to building out that, coming to define that requirement and work the requirements documents to getting it approved, whether it's at the Army staff, by the Chief of Staff of the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, or the Joint Staff. We make sure from end to end that we are the user's representative, and we cannot deliver functional capabilities without a user's input at any given times. So that said, capability development, managing capabilities, these are things that we do across the board that's going to enable the Army to gain the enduring warfighter advantage. It's going to enable us to achieve overmatch, and it's going to enable us to continue, in some regard, to align ourselves to the 2030 timeline. Okay, so now break. We're going to delve into the topic that's paramount, especially for this community of interest, and it's the evolving landscape of modern warfare, bridging that gap between intelligence and cyber operations. And as you guys know, we're all entrusted from a national security perspective, with the defense of our nation. And it's really critical that we adapt to the dynamic changes and the challenges that confront us. So today I entrust with you with exploring what that really translates to. You know, something I thought about was it's a symbiotic relationship, and perhaps, you know, oftentimes even here down at Orlando, the uniformed personnel that are here, you know, most of us are cyber, but one of the side conversations always come up: are you an intelligence cyber officer? Are you a signal cyber? What community did you come from? Because it truly, kind of the culture that you were raised in, it really makes a difference with how you kind of operate and you move with some of your calculus with when you're thinking through the problem sets. But I think from my perspective, having been intelligence, I look at cyber and intel as a symbiotic relationship. And the closing the gap is truly imperative to a necessity, not just a necessity, it's a strategic imperative. And as we all know right now, in this time and place, information is power. And so we have to have the ability from an intelligence perspective and from a cyber perspective to collect, to process, and to leverage intelligence in order to achieve success on the battlefield. And I think from my perspective, intelligence provides us with the insights that we need as we're building out cyber packages to understand our adversaries. It gives us predictability. It gives us an opportunity here to predict their actions in cyberspace. If you've really done cyber and intelligence preparation of the environment, and it gives us the ability to stay one step ahead, whether it's in cyberspace or in some of our planning efforts. It truly is the bedrock upon across the board in which military strategies are built. We also have to recognize that our adversaries have become more sophisticated. So our methods and the things that we're using, we have to stay lockstep across the board in the way that we collaborate, in the way that we gather, in the way that we interpret intelligence to support cyber operations. Now, when we talk about the realm of cyber operations, okay, it's the digital battlefield. It's where we're really waged in zeros and ones, and it's not as tangible, it's not as conceptual perhaps as cyber may be, but it's, you know, our world is increasingly interconnected, and our dependence on technology to some degree has become, as we look at maintaining overmatch, it's become our strength, but it's also become a vulnerability for us because we are so dependent on technology. And I think also when we look at who we are going up against, our adversaries, they recognize that. They recognize it to some degree as a vulnerability, and they look at any opportunity to hold us at risk and to exploit it to gain that advantage. So we have to figure out opportunities within intelligence and cyber where we can fuse, collaborate, work together, and not just look at it as enhancing a mission, but look at it as we're doing this to be a force multiplier. So I want you guys to imagine a scenario where our intelligence analysts are seamlessly collaborating to alongside some of our cyber operators. And they're getting real-time data gathered from various sources. They have the opportunity real-time to process that data, and they can analyze it pretty swiftly. Patterns, whether it's patterns and or anomalies, are able to be illuminated, identified with the speed and precision afforded, because in a world where we're able to employ, we'll say, advanced algorithms. And this intelligence is then directly applied in the digital domain to disrupt and dismantle the capabilities of our adversaries, whether it's C4I systems, comm systems, whether it's their C2 nodes. We're able to do that real time because we have our intel and our cyber analysts working together to hand it off, do a targeting package, and your operators are able to maneuver in cyberspace to either hold a target at risk or to impose costs on the adversary. I think that's incredible. And it's not science fiction. This is the future that we must build. And it's going to take a group of leaders to be very deliberate with making sure that we have that real time to support the warfighter. So closing the gap here, spoke a little bit about technology, but I think also what's important, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, having been an intel cyber officer versus a signal cyber officer, I think the mindset, it's the culture. And when we talk about what we're doing to collaborate, I think in general, we have to wipe that out. I'm a cyber officer. I'm a trained cyber officer versus, are you intel or are you signal? Or are you a network? We're all cyber officers, and we have to understand like what that translates to in 2023. So fostering an environment that encourages collaboration between intelligence and cyber and information sharing. Oftentimes people get very territorial with their information, but we have to put all of that out the window. We have to be willing to collaborate and share information across the board. Our intelligence analysts need to understand, the capabilities and the limitations of our cyber assets to inform IPE. And our cyber operators must comprehend the intelligence landscape in which they're operating, because that can inform some of our social media operations, understanding the dynamics of what the emotion is in that area. It could really support a multidiscipline operation. And if the marriage of these two domains will empower us to make informed decisions, it will also enable us to take decisive action, which I think is critically important. In an era where information is a weapon, our ability to secure, manipulate, and exploit that information is our greatest asset. Again, we have to bridge the gap between intel and cyber to create that holistic approach, and it will give us the ability to be agile, adaptive, and effective. Another piece I would like to mention is it's not new, but we have to recognize that our adversaries are not bound by the same policies, rules that we are, the rules of engagement. So what we see them doing across the board generally is operating in the shadows, again, holding us at risk, leveraging cyber capabilities to disrupt, to frustrate us, to disable us, to deceive us. And we have to be able to work together, fusing intelligence and cyber operations to counter the threats, which will enable us to whether neutralize them before they materialize into a tangible danger, or anticipate the opportunity or the threat, or to identify so we can action it. So I know that's a paradigm shift, because it is a mindset, it is a different culture, but I think if we're able to embrace that and knowing that that's critically important, fusing that intelligence and cyber operations, I think it will enable us, to secure our nation. It'll preserve the freedoms that we hold dear. It will give us the opportunity to be prepared to integrate forward to support multi-domain operations. So thank you. I know that we wanted to have time for questions, so I left a little bit of time, but I'm going to hand it over to Chief, I believe, and we can move forward with some questions.
Ma'am, thank you very much for the summary of the defense imperatives, as well as the roles and responsibilities of the ACOM cyber charter out there at Fort Eisenhower, Georgia. There is definitely a bunch of questions. There was a lot of key points that you hit on. Dear to my heart is that integration between the collaboration of intelligence and cyber, as we support information dominance to support decision dominance for the instruments of national power. All of those things is what we need to achieve as we are responsible for delivering the Army of 2030. So thank you very much for your summary. We do have a couple of questions that came in. There was one question or two questions that came in from CW2 Travis Whitesell, Netcom G2. His first question is: will increased collaboration between Cyber COE and Intel COE assist the force in integrating the capabilities and domain?
Absolutely. I think through through looking at how do we build out and support multi-domain operations, in every engagement that I've been in since I took over at the end of June, there has been collaboration with all the centers of excellence to include intelligence, right? And so we all have a seat at the table and we all talk about what our equities are and how some of those things can be mutually supporting. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am. And Chief Weissell's second question was additionally, with Gabriel Nimbus, is there an effort to refine the data to make it parsable to draw assessments from to create proactive defenses and standardize using US CJ SCM 6510.01b?
Now that was a whole mouthful, but with Gabriel Nimbus, we absolutely are looking at opportunities to continue to, one, modernize this and make sure that we're incorporating opportunities or building out opportunities where you're able to make it more configurable to the actual user. So whether it's building out parsers for business operations, but it's something that we look at. And I actually have my DECO team and my civilian deputy on the line if they want to kind of speak up to that. But certainly, because this is our cyber's number one priority, cyber analytics, Gabriel Nimbus, I think understanding how vital it is from the enterprise all the way down to the lower echelons. We have focused previously and today on being able to rapidly process terabytes of data, increasing ability to detect the adversary in that threat environment. But I think also something that we've worked on most recently is to look at how do we kind of curate this better for the user, whether it's developing parsers or filters to support the user.
Absolutely, and thank you, ma'am. I really do appreciate that response. And on this side of the House Hacking Foundation, we're pretty familiar with the Gabriel Nimbus program, as well as LTAC and that tactical capability that's associated, and definitely looking forward to the further development of GN. There was a
I
couple
will
of
say one other things to that. So as you mentioned with LTAC and LEAP, and for those that don't know, this is the opportunity. So when we talk Gabriel Nimbus, think big data platform at the enterprise. When you think LEAP and LTAC, this is where we have looked to push it forward, one, for a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons is to reduce bandwidth requirements on the network. And so you're able to kind of have that representation when you're out forward. But I think something that I failed to mention here, because I was kind of hyper focused on getting as many intelligence, close the gap between intel and cyber. But I think something that we all have to recognize is important is we have to include across the board industry partners as well. We have to include industry partners because, one, they're going to be critical to helping us get after what you just asked about. Some of those ideas that we can better operationalize these capabilities. So I just wanted to kind of talk through capability development, but the collaboration and partnership that we have, it includes industry partners because that's critically important. Over.
Absolutely, ma'am. Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am. Before I transition to the questions in the chat, there were about three or four pre-po questions from the Huachuca Rocks chapter that I'll pose now to you, ma'am. The first question is, what are the ways that DEI will help us win on the battlefield in 2035 and beyond?
That's interesting. So DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I actually had the opportunity. My husband works at the Secret Service, and they had me speak at one of their monthly DEI meetings. And I think that the points that I hit there are equally useful here, because when you think about DEI, it can enhance effectiveness by essentially fostering a more adaptive or adaptable and innovative force. And from a military perspective or an Army perspective, you can just fill in the blank of saying DEI can enhance military effectiveness, right, by fostering a more adaptable and innovative force. And when you think through diversity and when you bring together diverse perspectives, it can lead to a lot of things. One is what you'll find when you bring a group of people from diverse backgrounds together. You have more creative problem solving. You have a more inclusive environment because everyone's voices feel they can be heard. And I think this collectively promotes trust. It promotes cohesion among team members. And especially when you talk about on the battlefield, you need all of that. It'll be crucial to have those elements in a high stress situation on the battlefield. So I think importance of, having a diverse force. When you talk through culture, I think when you have when you have a diverse force, it will also help you better understand and connect with varied populations, right? So when contributing to whether it's communication in said area of operations, but also it can enable improved diplomatic and peacekeeping efforts. So you have to look at it holistically. Like DEI is incredibly paramount holistically from full range of operations.
Awesome. Thank you for that response, ma'am. There's a second specific chapter question as well. The question number 2 is, how has mentorship, either being a mentor, mentee, or both, influenced your military career?
So mentorship, I'll say start with mentorship. So mentorship, having been on the receiving end, has been very vital for my career development. And I'll say, it's an individual responsibility to seek out people that you want to learn and grow from. And so for me, having someone to run things past, it has really enabled me to essentially vector check some of my ideas. General Harding, I've had multiple conversations with him at different points in my career, just to kind of bounce things off of, vector check. And you need those leaders that will be honest and candid with you and not just sell you like what they think you should do, i.e. wolf tickets. So I think a quick anecdote is when I was coming out of company command, I was at Fort Meade, and I wanted to. I was still intel, military intelligence, and I wanted to go on this really cool mission to the Horn of Africa. It was somewhere close by the Horn of Africa, and it wasn't because it was going to get me promoted. It wasn't any of that. I wanted to go on this mission because the name of the mission sounded cool, and the per diem was like $200 a day or something. It was the most crazy reasons for wanting to put yourself in harm's way. But I was a young captain, and I was like, this is what I want to do. I went to my battalion commander, and he was like, you're not doing this. Go figure it out. And I remember calling one of my mentors and was like, what should I do, right? And so having that conversation, you know, really enabled me, and something even in my family dynamic, or when I'm talking to my mentees today or friends today, and they're struggling with something, I'm like, let's work through a decision matrix. Let's figure this out. Let's figure out what your criteria is. And we truly, back in 2008, worked through a decision matrix on what my priorities were. And my mentor helped me, he vectored me in a more right suited opportunity that 15 years later was career changing. And it truly, I can say, set the trajectory for where I am today, because it was on that deployment. I ended up deploying down to Iraq to lead a SIGINT terminal guidance team, Jester, Mad Dog. And on that deployment is when I was selected for JOCCP. So I will say it's critical. It's important for you to have people that you can have those very candid conversations with, and that's going to give you, you know, feedback or advice and help vector you or help you arrive at a decision, whether you can think it came up on your own, but truly help you navigate that point in your career to make the right decision. So that's mentorship. When we talk about mentees, mentors are important, but I think, you know, I also have a group of people that I collectively, you know, check in on. I provide mentorship to. And something I'm very deliberate about is I listen. I always listen, and I'm in receive mode. And I never try to tell them what Nadine would do or what right looks like. I provide, whether I have a shared experience or advice, I do that. And my hope is that I'm helping them navigate the challenges that they're currently facing, insights, you know, into their current location, because perhaps I've been there, or the culture of the organization that they potentially are in or going to, and I'm enabling them, or I'm contributing to them making a decision that's going to give them a fulfilling career for them as well as myself. Because I find when someone asks me to mentor them, it's an honor and it's a privilege. So.
Awesome. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your response. We have one more chapter specific question, and then we're going to pivot over to the chat. The last chapter question is: how can intelligence professionals deepen their understanding of the cyber domain and capabilities to ensure it is appropriately integrated into the intelligence preparation of the operational environment?
So I mentioned this a few times when I was speaking about cyber IPOE, or Intel preparation of the environment or the battlefield, but IPB is IPB is IPB. And cyber IPOE, but it's still IPB. So with Intel, you have to stay updated on the latest cyber threats, cyber technologies, trends, and I'll say kind of capture that. So 4 tenets. So that one will say continuous learning. You have to get that education and training. You have to look at low density MOS opportunities, and whether it's enrichment or ad hoc training, just look at opportunities where you or your people are able to stay integrated and abreast of the current trends in cyber technologies. Critically important. The second aspect I'll kind of bring up is collaboration. So being able to engage with cyber experts, professionals, both within and outside of the intelligence community, sharing the knowledge and insights, whether it's threat intel sharing, but you're able to stay abreast, goes back to cyber threats and vulnerabilities. And then also cross-training. So, excuse me, earlier when I talked about collaboration, and when you talk through a cyber operation, so being able to impose costs over here, but we have the intelligence professional your intel analysts, your cyber analysts, whether it's all source intel, whoever's feeding the intelligence is handing it over to the cyber analyst that's going to give it over to essentially an EEA or an RT analyst to build out that target package. It's so important for the intelligence analysts, and this is something I did when I became a task force commander at Cybercom. I walked around and every single person I asked, how is the work you're doing today contributing to the vision of Task Force One? How is the work you're doing? Because if you don't have a conceptual understanding of how we're going to impose costs, you don't need to be technically adept at it, but have an understanding of how we're going to get into the network, I think is important. So that being said, cross-training, develop a basic understanding of cyber operations, the tools that we use, the techniques that we use to facilitate effective communication and collaboration within the cyber community, or have a network of people where you can phone a friend. That's also important. Just having a network, Teams message, hey, can I hit you on high side? I have a question for you. Where you have folks integrated, always seeking for opportunities to be exposed to scenario-based training, i.e. PCTE or other capabilities, platforms that's being used to basically replicate the threat environment. But when you have interdisciplinary teams and you're able to give folks that level of training, hands down, you can't trade that for anything. And then also goes back to technology. So leveraging advanced analytics. You know, I'm sure one of the questions, I can't see all the questions coming in, AI, machine learning tools, the things that we're going to need at scale to process and analyze large volumes of data effectively, leveraging that technology. And then the last piece I'll speak on is policy, because policy is changing, because we're shifting, or we have shifted. So command time frame, we were still, you know, in Afghanistan, we were supporting kind of those types of operations. I was in the War College, and the word du jour was LISCO, large scale combat operations, 2020-22 era. And if I'm not mistaken, it's all leading to multi-domain MDO right now, multi-domain operations. So understanding that, you know, the relevant policies, regulations, where we're headed towards, what we're building towards, what capabilities are needed, what legal frameworks are out there that govern intel and cyber operations. One, to ensure that you're in compliance, but also to be informed in being able to support the decision-making process.
Thank you, ma'am. And in your response, you mentioned, you know, collaboration, information sharing, you know, the need to have modern solutions in order to meet the demands of tomorrow, which I believe is a really great segue into one of the questions that were posed in the chat by Major General Retired Harding. And to his question, kind of bringing in that multinational piece. His question is for PCTE, how mature is our effort to train our multinational partners in the cyber domain?
Right. So as I mentioned, with where we our current state is, we do have one country that we are partnered with and has access. We can't obviously on this median disclose the participation of our mission partners in that environment, but we are looking to integrate our mission partners, one, into future training iterations, opportunities, but also we're looking at opportunities to, if we're not able to today collaborate collectively, look at opportunities to be able to release content from training, so training content to our partners that's built into, you know, the development process to ensure sharing is the standard instead of the exception. Because when we say MDO, we're not saying, oh, US is going to fight MDO. We're saying when we go MDO, it's going to be all types of partners on deck. So we have to look at opportunities where we're able to get these capabilities out to some of our commanders or our mission partners on the ground as well, or in their respective countries. So something we are truly working on.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your response. Ma'am, I know that you're pressed for time. I would like, if it's okay with you, I would like to take one more question, if you have 2 more minutes.
Of course. And then if you don't mind, you can send the questions to myself or Becca. I know you were communicating with her, and we can certainly follow up.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. For the last question, this comes from Sergeant David Quinn from the 373rd MI Battalion, Army Reserves. His question is: are there any ways right now or in the future that human can get involved in cyber operations, or would it be a better discussion to reclass if this is something that we would want to pursue?
I think when you talk human enabled, I know it's certainly a different discipline, and it's not your traditional cyber path, but being able to, it goes back to collaboration, being able to do human enabled cyber operations. I think that's the opportunity that we have. And I don't know, and I'll have to get back with you. I don't know if we have anyone that's working this on the line, but I think it's something, one, that could really, someone with that training that's gone through the human intel or CI course, and being able to support our cyber operations, I think would be critically important when I look at the types of operations where we will have to surge on, whether it's information ops or MISO or CI support to cyber, or cyber support to CI. I think those situations where we truly have to look at the human dynamic and identify patterns of life, anomalies. We can't depend on AI to get after that. We have to be able to indicate this through the physically human aspect. And I think my civilian deputy answered the question.
Yes, we see the response from Mr. Tim Johnson. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, sir, for the response. Ma'am, I know that you're very pressed for time. I would like to turn it over to you for closing comments.
I really am appreciative of, one, the participation, because I'm, a colonel in the Army, and if someone offered me a lunchtime brown bag, I don't know at this point in time, through my hunger pangs and the opportunity, which one I would choose. So I know it's a big leap for a lot of people to stay back during their lunch period. Actually, yeah, it's your lunch period out there. It's 1500 here. But I want to thank you, and to know that if you guys ever have questions, or you want to be pointed in the right direction, please, I'm on Teams. People can reach out through me through, Acom Cyber. And I will either point you in the right direction or get you in the hands of the person that can point you in the right direction or answer the question. I think also, if there's anything to take away today, is the work that we collectively have to do to close that gap. And think about the scenario that I use with Intel all the way out to the guy on the keyboard that's imposing costs on the adversary, and the things we have to do to collaborate, to have a cohesive environment so we can be agile, adaptive, and effective as we surge towards multi-domain operations. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for your insightful discussion, ma'am. I know your time is truly valuable. It is greatly appreciated, and we are truly thankful for what you're doing on not only on the Army modernization enterprise side, but as well as all of the integration and the collaboration with all the warfighting functions and enablers. So, on the behalf of the Huachuca Rocks chapter, thank you very much for your time. General Harding, do you have anything to add, sir?
I'm going to make this very quick. Fred, first, thank you very much for putting this together, and you did a great job. Colonel Nally, thank you. I would normally just say goodbye because I know you're pressed for time, but I have to go back to your earlier comment about that mentoring phone call, or those series of phone calls. I learned way more from you than I'm sure I was able to impart to you. So, but thanks for that mention. But I wanted to point out to everybody else, to include Colonel Childs, Colonel Scott, and Colonel Bembenek, who were on this call. It was thanks to their input as well as Colonel Nally's that actually formed this group that led to the rocks in this signal chat. So with that, I just want to say thanks again, and Fred, back to you.
Thank you, sir, and ladies and gentlemen that are on the line. This will conclude the formal portion of the LPD. For all the questions that we didn't get a chance to get to, we will pass that on to Colonel Nally and follow up via email. While I still have you on the line, and I would not be a good steward of the chapter if I did not promote, advertise, and market who we are. If you enjoyed this discussion, in this fellowship and in this LPD today, I highly and you're not a part of Huachuca Rocks, I highly encourage you to join the chapter. Secretary Newsom is going to drop some of the instructions into the chat as to how you sign up. But as I mentioned during the introduction this morning, we're about networking, mentorship, fellowshipping, throughout the entire spectrum of the military warfighting functions, and then just professional and personal development in your everyday lives. We host monthly Zoom meetings, to include chapter meetings. As the chapter president, you do not necessarily have to be a chapter member if you just want to listen in just to see what business we are doing on the behalf of our community, as well as Team Huachuca. You're more than welcome to experience a chapter meeting. Additionally, thank you very, very much for joining in today, and for your time. And for the next LPD, it is scheduled for 13 December of next month. We're actually going to be hosting Major General Ebank, who is the NETCOM commander, with the topic of intelligence from the NETCOM commander's perspective. So that is scheduled for 13 December. Secretary Newsom will drop the details in the chat. And thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. We greatly.
Great job, Fred. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you joining, sir.
No problem, sir. Thanks for joining.
You too, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff, it's Fred. Can you still hear me?
Hey, loud and clear, Fred.
Cool. Can you capture like all the questions in like almost like a minutes like form and send it over to Colonel Nally and her team?
I will do. Yep, I will get that done. I think most of them I was just dropping them in the chat for you. I'll just pull them right out the chat and put them in like a Word document and send it over.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you.
No problem.
And yeah, and hey, Oliver, it's Fred. Great to kind of virtually meet you.